In the United States, where the government has announced new visa restrictions targeting Nigerians accused of undermining religious freedom following escalating violence and what Washington describes as targeted persecution of Christians in Nigeria. In a post on X, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said the restriction will affect those who knowingly direct, authorize, fund, support, and carry out violations of religious freedom. And I'll read Marco Rubio's post on X. He wrote, "The United States is taking decisive action in response to the atrocities and violence against Christians in Nigeria and around the world. The State Department will restrict U.S. visas for those who knowingly direct, authorize, fund, support, or carry out violations of religious freedom. This visa policy applies to Nigeria and other governments or individuals that persecute people for their religious beliefs." Well, Marco Rubio spoke with Fox News on Monday, issuing a stark warning about the threat posed by radical Islam, describing it as a clear and imminent danger to the world and broader West, and especially the United States. Let's take a look.
Radical Islam has shown that their desire is not simply to occupy one part of the world and be happy with their own little caliphate. They want to expand. It's revolutionary in its nature. It seeks to expand and control more territories and more people. And radical Islam has designs openly on the West, on the United States, on Europe. We've seen that progress there as well. And they are prepared to conduct acts of terrorism. In the case of Iran, nation-state actions, assassinations, murders, you name it, whatever it takes for them to gain their influence and ultimately their domination of different cultures and societies. That's a clear and imminent threat to the world and to the broader West, but especially to the United States, who they identify as the chief source of evil on the planet. Okay, the reason why they hate the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the leadership of the UAE, of Bahrain, is because they've allowed the United States to partner with them. That's why they hate them. They consider them infidels for it. They hate Israel. But they also hate America. And they hate anywhere in the world that we have influence. They seek to attack it, including here in the homeland.
Well, this is a clear signal that the Trump administration is taking a hardline approach to radical Islamic terrorism, marking a significant shift in U.S. foreign policy rhetoric. Well, the visa ban announcement comes a day after U.S. lawmakers convened a roundtable in Washington with religious freedom and foreign relations experts to discuss Nigeria's escalating violence on President Donald Trump's directive. Last month, House Foreign Affairs Africa Subcommittee Chairman Chris Smith introduced a resolution recommending the visa ban and asset freezes on individuals and entities responsible for severe violations of religious freedom in Nigeria, especially naming the Maeti Allah Cattle Breeders Association of Nigeria and Maeti Allah Cattle Hore as erring entities. Well, MACBAN has since denied allegations of carrying out genocide against Christians and urged Congress to withdraw the recommendation. Well, this visa ban announcement is a significant escalation in U.S.-Nigeria relations and represents Washington's most direct intervention yet in Nigeria's security crisis. Dr. Bati, I'd like your comments, but you know, we've often talked about these sanctions, and now we are seeing a clear sanction right now targeting individuals and entities that support and negotiate with terrorists as well. But also the mention of Maeti Allah in this whole conversation also is very important for you to discuss as well. So I'll tie in this story for us to discuss both. Meanwhile, the United States lawmakers have been urged to pressure the Nigerian government to abolish Sharia law in northern states where it has been adopted and disband the religious enforcement HISPA commissions, with experts warning that these laws and groups are fueling systematic anti-Christian persecution. While during the joint House briefing on Tuesday, Council on Foreign Relations Senior Fellow Dr. Ebenezer Obadari testified that the primary drivers of violence, Boko Haram, ISWAP, and radicalized Fulani militants exploit Sharia frameworks and Hisbah officials to impose extremist ideology and operate with near total impunity. Dr. Obadari laid out a twofold strategy. First, work with the Nigerian military to neutralize Boko Haram. And second, pressure President Tinubu to make Sharia law unconstitutional in 12 northern states where it has been adopted since the year 2000 and disband the various Hizbah groups who are seeking to enforce Islamic law on all citizens regardless of their religious identity. This is another push that we are seeing, Dr. Abati. You know, the call for the ban of Sharia law also is an uncomfortable conversation that needs to be had. Your thoughts?
Okay, since President Trump named Nigeria as a country of particular concern, redesignation after the Biden administration, there have been a lot of moves in the United States in terms of addressing the issue in Nigeria. Well, let's start with what we call radical Islam. Now, radical Islam, yes, it's a very serious threat, to the United States. We all remember 9/11, and it talks about basically extremist ideology that you can find either in terms of fundamentalism or in terms of the use of violent tactics to promote that particular religion. And 9/11 would seem to be a very good example of the kind of threat that radical Islam can pose. For the United States, 9/11 was a particular, wake-up call. And the international community have been mobilized since then to fight global extremism. So it's not just of concern to the U.S., it's also for the global community. Second, now the U.S. now saying, look, U.S. will fight it. Other countries are fighting it too.
Yes.
What we're talking about is the need for cooperation, to check extremism of any sort, whether it's called radical Islam or it is called terrorism or it is called banditry. Now, to come to Nigeria, the U.S. says, Nigeria is not a country of particular concern. The announcement that they will restrict visas is inside the Immigration and Nationality Act, Section 212, Sub A and Sub 3C, which gives the United States, the powers to restrict visas for certain category of persons and entities. And I had made a point earlier on that, it falls within the legitimate and sovereign right of the U.S. to admit whoever it wants to admit. It's not automatic that when you apply for visa that you'll be given. Where the problem will be is how do you identify who these religious extremists in Nigeria are? It's not as if Nigeria has a list of persons who are known as radical extremists. So that's why it's at the discretion of the consular section of the United States Embassy, issuing visa to persons. Now, the Nigerian government too does not have a list. If there is a list and they have published it, well, I have not seen it. And then when you look at the Middle Belt area, Benue, Plateau, Southern Kaduna in the Northwest, most of the people who are involved in these things, the basis is not religion. The basis is land. It's economic power. It's about access to resources. So it's a bit complex in Nigeria. The other thing you raised is the Sharia.
Yes.
Now it was Dr. Ebenezer Obadare, he used to be one of our colleagues in those early days, who recommended that two solutions to address the problem in Nigeria. Put pressure on the Nigerian government to do a lot more. Then ban Sharia in 12 northern states and also ban the Hizbah units.
Yes.
Well, the thing to note is that the Sharia law is in fact in the Constitution of Nigeria. I think I said this about 2 days ago. In sections 275, 279. And its jurisdiction is civil. It's not a criminal orthodoxy, as some people are trying to define it in the United States. It means that the Sharia law can only apply to persons who have elected to be tried under the Sharia law. And we have Sharia Court of Appeal. We have in some of these states, where you have the Sharia. And in any case, it's a federal system.
Yeah.
Some states, that say, we want to adopt this kind of system of law are allowed to do so. But that law should not apply to people who who do not subscribe to it. So you cannot use Sharia law now to punish Christians.
Yes, and so
I do not think that President Tinubu has the powers to unilaterally say, oh, you will declare Sharia law unconstitutional. In fact, that will be a prescription for chaos,
all right,
for conflict.
All right.
In fact, it will worsen the situation because persons from those 12 northern states and religious leaders who, since 1978 Constitutional Conference, insisted on the Sharia being accommodated as a personal orthodoxy.
Right.
They will be the ones to now rise up in arms. So in trying to solve a problem in Nigeria, you create another problem.
All right. You know, we have often seen, like you have said, that the Sharia law should not be used to persecute Christians, right? But we have seen that happen. I think we've discussed this at length. Ayo,
Yes.
even recently, we've seen...
Now it's inching closer.
Yes.
And the truth is that we need to also decide whether or not Nigeria is a secular state or not.
Correct.
If we say that Nigeria is a secular state, then we cannot have sports whereby a particular religious law is allowed. So we need to make that decision. And I did mention at the beginning of this conversation around Christian genocide that we must have uncomfortable conversations around Sharia law in some states. I also believe that it's important to find out to what extent the Christians living in those... we've seen incidents where it crosses over.
We have
it always
most
crosses
of them
over
here
at a while. And that's where the
Yes.
challenge is. If something was instituted or called upon, if we see that it has a negative effect, we can go back to the conversation, revisit it, and actually find out if it's still working.
Except that Sharia is not a religion.
No,
Section 10 of our
but it
Constitution
applies to a
is clear.
particular religious group.
The Sharia
but
court.
the Constitution says there shall be no state religion.
Correct.
In any part. And there's no state of Nigeria where they say you must only be Muslims or you must only be Christians.
Yeah,
There's
but
no
the
such state.
point she's making
No,
is
it's a
about
system
Sharia
of
law.
judicial administration.
That applies to only a particular religious group.
Or
religious
whoever
group.
submits to it.
Yes.
But it's mainly the religious
So
group.
let me tell you why
It's
she's
religious,
talking about,
yeah.
why we're talking about this, because only recently I think we saw a
In
man's
Abuja.
store that was
Was
closed
yes.
down in Abuja and said it was a Sharia court that repossessed his property. And we have seen some of
There's
these...
no Sharia in the EFCT.
Well, that was the conversation.
In the state where it was brought before.
It was brought before.
And so there are inches.
So it was in the state it was brought before.
Closer,
so
yeah.
exactly, because the people that were persecuting were, using the Sharia court to do that. And so, like Ayo has said, this is a situation where these laws are inching and also persecuting people that have not subscribed to it. Yes. For example, we saw Deborah, the killing of Deborah, who was blasphemous, and she was killed. She was burned, but she was Christian, and they used the blasphemy law to persecute her. So, these are the sort of conversations that are uncomfortable and need to be had. If we have to revisit the conversation, we should open it again on the table. And this is my thought. The Constitution is being reviewed all the time, Dr. Bat, isn't it?
No, we're talking about Sharia law. I'm saying it will cause a lot of problems.
Well,
I don't think President Tinubu needs to go in that direction.
Well, that's your advice. But the Nigerian people are saying that these are the conversations that need to be had. If this is a situation where Christians are being persecuted for something that they did not subscribe to, I believe it's something that should be put on the table.
Yes.
That's really all it is.
We're going to constitutional reform conversation, so...